Good to see you. How are you?
Doing well. Good to
Great.
see you.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you very
Wildly
much.
out of bounds.
Why, we have a criterion, and that's it. Out of bounds is fine. Wildly is unacceptable for
Okay.
No,
us.
delighted to be here with you all.
We're glad
Well,
to
thank
have
you very
too.
much for taking the time to be with us, Attorney General. We really appreciate it. So you had an opportunity to be sitting at the Supreme Court there for the birthright citizenship arguments, which turned into a lot of about these nationwide injunction things. But tell us what you thought, what it was like.
First of all, it was amazing, and I had been there mostly as a tourist, right? Even before law school, you go to an institution like that, you take it all in. So to be back there representing Massachusetts, and I always say it's an honor and privilege to be the AG of Massachusetts. I never take that for granted. But sitting, representing our state and Commonwealth in this birthright case, which is a significant one before these justices, I'm still processing the blessing of it, to be candid. And in this particular moment when everything is on the line in terms of the rule of law and protecting our Constitution, I think the birthright case is such a powerful case to continue to lift up as to why people should care. Not just care about the issue, which is this idea that birthright, if you were born in this country, on American soil, you are a citizen of this country. But the targeting of babies and unborn babies to try to advance some immigration policy is absolutely concerning. It has to do with the 14th Amendment. So if a president thinks that he can dismantle the 14th Amendment or Constitution with the stroke of a pen or a Sharpie, which he cannot do, then he can come for any other amendment. So pick your favorite, the first, the second, or anything else. So we were down there defending the 14th Amendment, unborn babies, but most importantly, the Constitution. And what I actually left the court feeling was not only how historic and what a blessing it was to be there, I actually appreciated the thoughtfulness of every single justice, including those we deemed to be the most conservative justices who were pushing the Department of Justice on this question of whether or not the relief we have won in this case that says the president does not have the power to dismantle birthright citizenship, that relief is afforded to everyone across the country. So we were there on that narrow issue, and everyone asked thoughtful questions of the administration, and they didn't have really good answers, and sometimes actually talked in circles. And I appreciated the thoughtfulness of this court, who I think cares deeply about the rule of law and recognizes if we don't have the rule of law of the Constitution, then this country is something else. We're moving towards fascism, and most importantly, you don't have economy or functioning economy without a Constitution.
We should say you're a plaintiff. The Massachusetts
Absolutely.
is a plaintiff in the case. You weren't just there as
Absolutely. We were there with
AG
New
observer.
Jersey. Right, New Jersey. Let me mention the other states. New Jersey,
please.
Washington, California. He got stuck on a plane. I don't know what happened there. But there's a coalition of Democratic AGs standing up for this.
We don't care about the other states.
I
But,
know. I know, which is okay,
it's
because I
okay.
love Massachusetts and we're the best state.
But I want to challenge something you said that was actually
Yeah.
quite moving. If we don't have the rule of law, well, we don't have the rule of law. We discussed this with Doris Kearns Goodwin. We only said it 1,000 times, so our apologies. Let's just pick one case, as we're going to talk to you about ICE in a second here,
Yep,
Attorney
yep.
General. The Supreme Court said facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Trump then says to the reporter, Terry Moran for ABC, yep, I could get him back. He says, I can. And they've done absolutely nothing, as far as the court knows, nothing to comply with a court order. And nothing has happened to them for violating, I would argue, the rule of law from the Supreme Court of the United States. So aren't we in a situation that even if the courts do what you consider to be the right thing, there's a very good chance that it won't mean anything in terms of the president's behavior?
So I'll say a couple of things. I don't think just because this president is operating unlawfully and has a pattern of behavior of taking unlawful actions and also not being responsive to all of the orders coming from the courts, that does away with the rule of law. We do have a rule of law in this country. What we have is a president who does not think the rule of law is applicable to him. And so what we're seeing as AGs, and it's not, and not to be political here, but I have to because it's the facts. It's only Democratic AGs across the country standing up for the rule of law and pushing back on this president when he takes unlawful actions that undermine it or look to dismantle that rule of law in this Constitution in this country. And so on the birthright case, for example, you have someone attempting to use an executive order to do away with the Constitution. And we're saying you do not have that power. The Constitution doesn't give it to you. Presidents do have power, Immigration is a big area of federal authority, along with engaging with wars, pardon power. So we're in court consistently protecting the rule of law, but it's a reminder to folks that we are heading in a dangerous direction because our tools within an AG's office are very limited in holding an administration accountable. When we get to a point where folks in this country think, because of their power position, that they are bigger than the law, that they're no longer president, they're a king, then that is out of our realm. That is then now the question for people and for voters, for example. How civically engaged are you? Did you vote? Did you encourage other people to vote? At some point, you have to ask yourself that question too, which of course is beyond the reach of our tools. But I tell my constituents in Massachusetts all the time, I will do everything in my power using the tools that I have to protect our residents here, protect the Constitution, and protect our economy.
We're going to get to your calls in just a minute, by the way.
But you know what I wonder, Attorney General Campbell, why doesn't one of these judges hold these people in the Trump administration in contempt of court? I mean, because they're just, especially with Abrego Garcia, who's been in prison for all this time against what the Supreme Court said. Shouldn't that happen?
I think the courts need to maximize their tools in this moment in time, and maybe even at times take a few risks, because why the hell not?
Yeah.
And why I say that is, in our office, when we were filing our NIH lawsuits, we filed the first one to protect the critical funding, billions of dollars, in biomedical research, clinical trials, life-saving treatment that the president attempted to wipe out on a Friday night. We ran into court to say, you cannot do that. This is clinical trials for pediatric cancer, for example. This is resources that protect our economy because of our healthcare institutions here and biomedical innovation. And we won that case, and then we went into court the second time on NIH 2 because they were playing games, canceling grant meetings, but still having the same impact. And some AGs didn't join our case, like they did NIH 1, because they weren't willing to take that risk. And I said, well, actually, we're pushing the law a little bit, but I actually think we have strong arguments here based on the action of this administration to try to cut funding on NIH. So we're taking some risk and we're pushing the envelope. Everyone needs to do that in this moment in time in response to the unprecedented actions we're seeing from this administration.
So
but haven't they canceled a lot of this funding? It's gone, a lot of the
much of
funding.
In the context of so many of our federal funding lawsuits, we are actually winning. The faucets of funding have not turned off.
They have not turned off.
They have not. And actually, in our NIH cases, we have, in our first one in particular, the money is continuing to flow. We turned it back on. That being said, I do operate in reality, and the reality is when they made that decision on a Friday night to cancel funding, that then affects clinical trials, for example. So you had some folks across the country literally driving hours to go to a clinical trial only to learn that it was canceled. And of course, we then are in court to try to get the courts to keep up, to maintain access to those trials. But if you know anything about clinical trials, for example, you miss one, it's not like you can make up that clinical trial to then get back on your care that you hope will save your loved one's life. So these decisions by the federal government are certainly having an impact, not only creating fear in community, costing potentially lives of our constituents, absolutely undermining our economy, and maybe even moving us toward a recession. That reality is real, but this is why I show up in the office every day as AG to do my part to fight back against what we're seeing.
Okay, so we had a bunch of questions about ICE's presence in the state, but our first caller has a ICE-related questions. Let's start with her, and then we'll do follow-up. Melanie from Newburyport, you're on with the Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell. Hey there, Melanie. How are you?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
My question is about Massachusetts laws governing the practice of ICE and DHS officers being unmasked and unbadged and driving unmarked vehicles. Mm-hmm. I think it puts all of us at risk for abuse and escalation, even our own law enforcement. Our law enforcement don't wear masks. They have badges. They even have name badges. And FBI agents typically don't wear masks during raids. So I'm just wondering if it's legal here and could it be banned?
Great question, Melanie.
It's a great question. And I actually appreciate, Melanie, your frame, because what we're seeing from ICE enforcement right now in Massachusetts is creating fear and not advancing public safety. And it's not just ICE officials. Now you have other non-ICE federal agencies, FBI and other agencies, showing up to do aggressive enforcement here in Massachusetts, in stark contrast of our law enforcement. So I have a state police division within my own office where we are out there taking on all types of cases to remove drugs off the street, guns off the street. We do it in such a way that we not only follow the law, but they make themselves, if they're not undercover, obviously, known to the public, and they do it with the highest of exceptionalism and integrity. We're not seeing that. And so a couple of points on this. Where we are fighting back, one is for due process, and Rumeysa's story is a good one.
Ozturk from
Somerville.
Sword,
You know,
Grad,
intimately,
Somerville
I talked to her recently.
Oh, you did?
That she's incredible. She is absolutely incredible, given what happened to her, but in addition, that she still has legal proceedings ahead of her. The grace that she has, the spirit she has is remarkable. But we were involved in that early on. Did not mince my words, and in a statement I put out, just immediately saying this is unacceptable. And frankly, now there will be more incidents. We probably can't even keep up if we were to put a statement out. So we're taking action to protect due process, supporting her lawyers. We're also making sure if something horrific happens to someone, that lawyers are available for these folks, immigration lawyers. And frankly, a call to action right now, we need more lawyers to step up. In addition, when we show up on the 14th Amendment issue, it's obviously protecting unborn babies and babies in this immigration enforcement effort by the administration. But what I want folks to know is while we will do our part, it's still very hard to hold the federal administration and ICE officials accountable for the activity we are currently seeing in Massachusetts. They are patrolling our streets. They are at times unmasked. They do not necessarily identify themselves, which makes our jobs in the AG's office, but also law enforcement, harder. Why? The authority of the federal government when it comes to crafting immigration policy and implementing it is extremely strong. It is unprecedented, actually, for a state to hold ICE accountable for actions that they are doing while advancing, from their perspective, immigration policy and immigration efforts. It has to be something so egregious, possibly. That being said, it's not off the table for us to hold ICE accountable, but let me tell you, it is absolutely ridiculously hard to be able to do that given the authority they have, the supremacy clause in this country, and the significant authority ICE has, including being able to engage and pick someone up off the street without a warrant.
That's what I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
So
You know,
on
one
that
of-
point,
I'm sorry.
on that point,
Yeah.
we're outside the warrant. What I am doing, and I'm pushing my team, where we hope to have someone make something by the end of this week, early next week, is we've put out a lot of guidance to institutions about how to protect the privacy of folks, their information, but also if ICE shows up at a healthcare facility. We've put out guidance, find it on our website, Mass AGO, guidance to institutions on how to engage with ICE. The thing we need to do now is put out information to the public on what they should expect or not expect from when ICE is patrolling our communities, what is lawful and what isn't. Because they will be shocked to see the significant authority that ICE has, including patrolling our communities, based on this concerted effort by the federal administration, which we know is doing nothing whatsoever to advance public safety, but creating fear and putting people into hiding, including the very people we sometimes depend upon to actually take cases on, to advance cases in order to protect folks in our communities.
Yeah, one more question on this, then we'll get back to your calls. We're talking to the Attorney General, obviously. It seems to me, and there may be exceptions to this, that what we as a society and government does is when an abomination is perpetrated by Tom Homan or his people, we respond to it, whether it's Ozturk or Khalil or mass deportation. But there's almost no preemptive legal strategy. And let me
I understand.
suggest one, if I may. Marjorie and I we're laboring on under a misconception about warrants. We have said on the air, and we were wrong apparently, that if you want to grab someone out of their house, you need a warrant from a judge. If you want to grab someone off the street, you don't need a warrant. Well, it turns out we're wrong, and you know this. We didn't know this. Under the Immigration and Naturalization Act, you need an administrative warrant, meaning given by a federal agency, not a judge, even if you want to grab somebody off the street, unless you can make a case that they're likely to escape before you get the warrant. Well, my understanding is they never have an administrative warrant. So why aren't we able to, almost never, why aren't we able to get in court and get some injunctive relief that mandates in advance that if there's no administrative warrant and they can't make a showing that that person was likely to escape, that they've committed a wrongful act and should be held accountable by court. Do you understand my question,
I
Lisa?
absolutely understand your question,
So
and I
what's the
absolutely
answer?
agree with you. It's not, we can't always just be reactive.
Exactly.
We have to be proactive. I agree with you. But what I want folks to understand, including listeners, the federal authorities government, authority, when it comes to immigration enforcement, is the scale is stacked against us. So say we do that, we go in and say administrative warrant, which they don't always have to have. They could say, well, we didn't, they will go back. Based on even what we're seeing now, they don't give a damn about administrative warrant. They don't care. What we're seeing from the posture of folks showing up in our community right now, they don't care. And guess what? Even if we were to hold them accountable post getting that order, you get an administrative warrant. We go back into court to say, well, this ICE agent didn't have one. Good luck. Good luck trying to hold them accountable, not just because of the supremacy clause, but also because, well, to your point, they were trying to escape. They were doing X, Y, and Z. And then it gets even worse for us as a state to try to continue to think about holding them accountable. It's not off the table, and I'm not saying it is.
But you seem to
I'm
be
not
saying,
saying it is, but I
you
want
seem
to-
to be saying, as your Attorney General, please, I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I care deeply about you. I'm going to do my damnedest to protect you, but the reality is, based upon the state of the law, I can't do much up front except educate you as to what your rights are.
So right now, the question that is in our communities that I welcome is how the hell do we hold ICE accountable for what we're seeing on our streets?
What's the
whether
answer?
in Worcester
What's the
or other
answer?
places.
How do we hold them
It is
accountable?
very difficult to hold them accountable.
But what-
Why is that? Because the federal authority
Right.
and laws that give them such power, they have tremendous power to enforce immigration law. So you almost have to see something so egregious to possibly hold ICE accountable. And why is this? Even for principles like qualified immunity. I was going and doing it in the line of my official capacity. It might be easier to hold ICE accountable if they, for example, I'm sitting at a bar having a beer, because why not? Every once in a while you need one, especially in this time. I'll digress. But, I'm sitting there catching up with constituents. An ICE official comes in off duty and then starts to do something, harassing folks, doing something outside of their official duty. That's a lot easier to hold them accountable. It's much more difficult. So this is where I say we will do our part, but other people can do their part. Law enforcement, local law enforcement, has discretion. I was pleased to hear the Worcester chief say, we're not pursuing any charges against that young person.
That 16-year-old.
Looking at the totality of what happened and saying, I feel bad for that person. Yes, right? Discretion, we can use that. At the same time, I can put out this guidance because guess what? To your point, people go out thinking people not only have to have a warrant, but they have to engage a certain way. Sorry, that's just not the case. And I think that information is critical because it then defines for all of us, given what we're seeing, what our expectation is and just how hard it is in the immigration context. And so when I say we're going to do our part maximally, we will. But we also engage with judges and courts all the time. We see what they're prone to support on and what they're not. You just saw the Supreme Court in this Venezuelan TPS or
Temporary protected
Temporary
status.
protected
TPS status
status, yeah.
case. The Supreme Court did not have to insert itself at all in that question. It was working its way through the courts. The lower court in California made a decision. The appeals court made one. The Trump administration didn't like it. They went to the Supreme Court. Then you have the Supreme Court inserting itself in ways it didn't. So you don't even know where you're going to get from the courts. But let me tell you, at least based on the history of precedent, the Constitution in this country, it gives significant power to the president. And that's when people need to wake up.
hold on just
Because at
one-
the end of the day, my last point on
Yep,
this,
okay.
he's there because people voted for him to be there, whether we
Right.
like it or not. And so the question becomes for those who don't like what they're seeing in their community right now, did you vote? Did you encourage others not to vote? And do you realize now that who's in a White House matters? He could, for example, working with us to bring down pricing or working with Walmart to bring down pricing for goods. But he's not doing that. Instead, we're seeing this aggressive posture on immigration. So I just have to leave people with that point because I think it's important. because it doesn't just put it all on one AG. It
Right.
puts on all of us to say there's a part we can play in determining what we're seeing in our community.
But just
Can
one
we-
thing that
I'm
I'm
sorry.
confused about before we leave this: the Supreme Court is upholding due process. They've not said we can
They are.
do away with due process. So isn't that an area where when people are hauled off, like Rumeysa Ozturk hauled off the street without due process, they've said you can't do that.
And we're fighting for due process. My office, have filed briefings in support of due process and the administration following due process in other cases involving immigration, even in court with a lawsuit to protect status of
Yep.
TPS, et cetera. We're doing our part. But listen what the Supreme Court did, not fully doing their part. They said return the gentleman, but didn't give him any instructions.
Yep.
They could have, but they didn't because they're playing cute, right? They could have said, bring this gentleman back today via plane, been really specific. But you have some folks playing politics, including on our Supreme Court. I can't discount that, even though I thought they were thoughtful in the Birthright case. You still see the political leanings of certain justices showing up, or even no explanation as to why they're making decisions. The court can do more, and it should do more. I can't control that. So the question that we all have is, what can each of us do? To your point, you even educating folks right now using this platform on what ICE can and can't do. So we're going to do what we can, but even then, I don't like to just do things knowing we'll get an outcome that is a temporary fix and solution to the problems we're seeing. I'm thinking outside the box, and I need some time, given what we're seeing from ICE and figuring out how we can reply within the confines of the law.
Let's go to Kevin and Lowell. You've been very patient. You're next on with the Attorney General. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, thanks
Hi.
for taking my call. Thank you, Attorney General.
Thank you, Kevin.
Nice to speak with you. I'm enrolled in the social equity program, and I've been
I
involved in
can't hear.
cannabis advocacy going back.
The Attorney
He's
General
involved in
can't
the
hear.
social equity program of the. Continue for a second. Let's hear if the Attorney General can hear you. If not, we'll put you on hold and get back to you after the break to see if we can have a better connection. Continue, Kevin.
Sure. I'm enrolled in the Cannabis Control Commission social equity program,
Okay.
and I've also been involved in advocacy for going back to the medical program. I know that the CCC has a number of issues they need to work through, but I'm really concerned about discussions about potentially removing the independence of the CCC and moving it under a constitutional officer, especially given how the rollout of the medical marijuana program went back when it was under the governor. I was curious if you support preserving the independence of the Cannabis Control Commission.
Kevin, thanks for the call.
Thank you, Kevin, for the call. Well, right now we're in the weeds here, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that there's some reforms that need to be done, and we've been advocating with my joint appointment authorities and others in the legislature on ways to improve this commission. And frankly, even folks who are participating in that social equity program who came to us with concerns around some notice issues on the program that we were able to work with team members on to cure, to provide, make sure there was more transparency. So it's not a question I can answer by myself. I think I'm engaging with a lot of stakeholders who have different thoughts and opinions. But one thing we have to do is get them the staff they need, get them the human capital they need, so that they can deliver to folks. And so, Kevin, if you actually want to stay on and engage a little bit more, because we have been in the weeds on this as a policy question, we're happy to actually get more from you and go from there.
Kevin, don't hang up. A producer will get your contact info
Yeah.
and give it to the Attorney General. Before we take a break, can we do some good news?
That would be nice.
We
Yes.
trash the
I would
legislature
love some good
all the
news.
time. They did the right thing. I know where you were on this. This eviction legislation.
awesome.
We talked with Andrea Cabral about this years ago. Governor Patrick
Yep.
did something with Corey records, criminal
Yep.
records, to ensure that these don't follow people for the rest of their lives. What happened on the eviction front, if you can?
So right now, you can get your eviction record sealed in Massachusetts. And I got to give a shout out to Senator Literary Edwards, who played a critical role
Yep.
on this, Rep. Moran as well, all of the advocates. And so in this state, sadly, and I'll just give one example for the sake of time, soon as an eviction is filed against you, you have an eviction record. Even if you win that case later, you still have it on your record. So we saw the impact of folks trying to build their wealth, get into housing, because of a flawed, inaccurate record. So now you can petition the court, go through a process that we want to make as easy as possible to have that sealed. And so many organizations are involved. We continue to put our information on our website, too, to help folks. So if anyone thinks they're interested or need this process, reach out to us.
Well, let me just say one thing before we take the break. It's not just people who are not at fault and wrongly sued.
Absolutely.
Even if you're found to be at fault, there are rules in place. There's a longer waiting period so you can have it expunged as long as you don't do the same thing again. So there's a lot of protection
Absolutely.
for people, and they should. Is it on your website?
So you can go on Mass AGO, yes. There's also, and I'll get this after the break. 'Cause
Okay.
it's a sealing like actual website, which I
Oh,
will
let's do
get.
that.
So I'll get that for after the
Great.
break for people to go to walk through that process.
Great. You have the website on the eviction thing.
Yes,
What
and
is
how
it?
do you forget this? Sealmyeviction.org.
Seal my eviction.
Yeah.
Right to the
And
point.
so
.org.
great legal information
Great.
out there, and folks can follow with them, but of course our office as well.
Even if you lost your case, check out that
Exactly.
website. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, we get this question all the time since you're the Attorney General, law enforcement person here running the whole show in the Commonwealth. We'll ask you. There's a lot of misunderstanding about whether.
Now that I'm no longer in the weeds,
That's right.
in the weeds
No longer in
on
the
the
weeds.
Cannabis Commission.
That's right. About the constitutional rights that people have who are non-citizens. Tell us about what they're entitled to.
Well, I'm not-
People think they're entitled to nothing, basically.
No, that's not true.
Yeah.
That's not true, and every state is different in certain expansion of rights, whether it's free tuition or certain things that we're affording folks. But they're trying to use this sort of argument in the 14th Amendment case, saying, well, they're here not, and I put this in quotes, subject to the jurisdiction
Yeah.
of us. And we say that is total nonsense. They are subject to the jurisdiction of us, and that's been around for over 150 years. You're here in Massachusetts, you still have to follow the laws, et cetera, which we were actually seeing from immigrants, including those that are undocumented, who are going to work, who are paying taxes, and so even the false narrative that suggests they are not is ridiculous. And then those who are committing crimes, our office does criminal liability.
Right.
So whether you are a citizen or not, if you are perpetuating crime in Massachusetts, we hold you accountable. And that may mean you are deported if you're not here lawfully. That may mean if you're a citizen here, you are incarcerated. We are doing that every day while not creating fear in our communities, which is in stark contrast of what we're seeing from ICE and the federal administration.
But like a Rumeysa Ozturk would have, she could
They have
express
free
her-
speech rights. They have due
Absolutely.
process rights.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Free speech,
Absolutely.
due process, all
and if
those
she committed
things.
a crime, we'd be picking her up
Right.
and holding her accountable
So
for
she's
that.
entitled to write
That's
her
right.
piece supporting Gazans or people in Palestine in this war without being deported. Okay.
Let's go to Mike in Jamaica Plain. You're on with the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell. Hi.
Hello, yes, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I did have a comment, a quick question just based on what the Attorney General just said. What right do we have to defend ourselves if someone tries to seize us on the street without a badge? But my comment was about the audit and Governor Healy and the recent immigration fiasco, where she was blaming immigrants for lack of resources, when we now know, thanks to the audit, that she was misspending millions of dollars. So we need an audit. We voted for it. The time has come. As far as I'm concerned, she's as corrupt as Trump is, and we just don't know.
By the way, the audit that you're talking about has nothing to do with question one. It was
Yeah.
about shelter
And
contracts
I would say
that
that's
sort of
a
thing.
question for the governor on that audit. I haven't even seen it fully. It just came out. That's a question for
How
the
about,
governor.
the ability
and I
to
think
protect-
the governor is going to be on here at some point.
She is.
I
She's
think
always
corrupt as Trump may have been a little of extreme.
Well, that's for he's entitled to say what he wants. How about his first question? What right do you have to protect yourself or to act if I assume he meant if an ICE agent comes after you?
And it's difficult. That's why people, rightfully so, including myself, are so angry by what we're seeing in our communities. And this idea that they are saying we are here, putting out press releases included, saying we're promoting public safety. They are not. They're promoting fear and lawlessness and jeopardizing even what Melanie said, I'm going back to her name, the law enforcement that are trying to do the right thing here, even though they can't. They're not ICE, right? Trying to also, of course, protect people. Very difficult what they're doing in our communities right now.
Okay, so what Mike conflated was the audit that was came out today or yesterday, I guess, and a topic I know you love discussing with us, which we
Still
discuss
waiting on
every
the
month.
auditor.
Well, here's where I am confused. We asked the auditor to release her correspondence with you, and she said there was an attorney-client privilege, and we said to her, well, you can waive the attorney-client privilege since you're it. She did. She sent us 150 pages of stuff. You keep saying to us, I need to know what she wants to audit. Is that not what you say until
That's
I know
one
that?
thing.
Okay, well, let me tell you. Here's her letter to your office on February 27th. The title is, "What's the scope of the audit that the OSA intends to perform?" The scope of the OSA's current audit of the General Court legislature.
No. First of all, what is it? The date of that?
February 27th.
Of this year?
Yeah.
Is that the last correspondence
I don't know if it's the
from
last
our
correspondence.
office to her office?
I don't know what it is. Well, no, it's from her. It's from your office, right? And this is about.
No, not the. Is it the last?
She is
one?
okay. Forget that. Okay, here's what I want to say. She has laid out, according to our reading of the 150 pages, specific areas that she wants to audit. Not what she might audit in the future, but what she wants to audit now. Here's my question that I still don't understand. Why can't you make a determination based upon what she says she wants to audit now is either constitutional or not? And if you rule that it's constitutional, in the future, if she goes too far, you can rule that that request is unconstitutional and she's not
That's
entitled to it.
not a ruling we make. So we made this. We actually put out correspondence. I included, and others, I think, added additional commentary outside of the AGO before the ballot question on whether or not she had the authority to audit the legislature. We made it clear then she does not, if she, as envisioned then, was going to take that audit into certain places. You do not. And we made it also clear, yes, you can proceed with a ballot question, but the challenge with the ballot question is it does not require a constitutional analysis before you put it
Understood.
to voters, which is ridiculous. It makes no sense. You're asking people to vote, and you haven't decided whether it's constitutional or not. Now she wants us to go into court and to defend her against the legislature, saying that the audit she wants to do is constitutional.
Yeah.
I cannot bring myself into court to do that if we do not know the fullest scope of the audit she wants to perform.
So the
I've
fullest
said
scope
that
meaning
several
that she
times.
ever may want to audit?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because there are certain places that are unconstitutional, and until she says, for example, I agree with you. This is unconstitutional. This is unconstitutional. The court's going to ask the same question.
Okay, so let me one more question on this. So but
I have to add one more thing
Sure.
because we have put out correspondence too. And if you look at our last correspondence, because it does not always mean that you're getting a full picture, because in addition to the correspondence, we have met with her team over and over and over again.
Okay.
And my last point on this, and why I say last is because the last I checked, the biggest question I'm getting right now is on ICE, not the audit.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that in a way that discounts the ballot. I want to
72%
enforce
of the
that.
people, including you,
I agree, but that
voted
was
for
before
it.
ICE was patrolling our
Agree.
streets.
Well, you can do two
right?
things at once, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But I'm just saying that I've said the same thing on this radio show.
Okay, I want to clarify one thing. I'm sorry. This is really important. I want to make sure that you agree with this. If you thought that any audit by the auditor of the legislature was unconstitutional, you could make that decision now. You don't need to see the details. But it seems to me
some audits are constitutional and some are not.
Some are. So,
and we've made that clear to the auditor. We made it before the ballot question.
So why don't you just tell her what she's allowed to audit under the Constitution and what she can't?
Because guess what? I'm not the auditor. When I represent every state agency in this state, that's my job. They come to me and say, I would like you to represent me, including the governor or anyone else, to represent me in a matter. I then ask them the questions the court would say. Great, thank you. What relief, for example, are you asking from the court?
You're basically,
no, let me finish, Jim.
Sorry.
What relief are you asking from the court? What decision do you want? What law do you want us to enforce?
Okay.
We ask tough questions. We do not represent everyone all the time. And the same is true here. I can't put myself in her shoes. She has every right, given the authority of her office, to say, I want to audit the legislature. Great. Depending on the scope of that audit, it can be constitutional or not.
So you don't want to know the scope now. You're saying, and then we'll move on, you're saying I need to know the potential full scope that she may ever audit before I make a determination. Is that what you're saying?
Because the court will ask,
Okay.
what's the scope?
Okay,
And
I just
so
want to understand it.
I'll end with this. The last correspondence we sent was just that, in a very loving way. I don't want to suggest just because me and you are going back and forth that it's like, no, it's not personal. It's not personal. It is, this is what the court would ask us when we go in. And, for example, if in our conversations with the team and the auditor in correspondence, it is different. On the one hand, you're saying, I want to audit this, and then it's something else or something else. We need a full picture of that so when we go into court. And we've made that clear from the very beginning.
Susan from Dorchester, you're on with the Attorney General. Welcome.
Susan from where?
Dorchester.
Oh, wonderful. Hi, Susan.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for returning my call.
Thank you.
Returning your call.
Returning your call. You called us.
I love that.
Sorry.
And I love that you're from Dorchester. Go ahead, Susan. Go. Go, Susan,
Well,
go.
I love being from Dorchester. My question is this. We filed a complaint with your office a few months ago regarding Sunrun Solar.
Oh, yes.
And I haven't heard back from your office. We're having a lot of problems with Sunrun. They put us into a collection agency saying that we owe $5,800. We've been in touch with them, and we have not heard anything back. We've been asking for an itemized account of the money that we owe, and we haven't heard anything from them.
Before Susan,
So
before
I'm just
she answers,
wondering
She
if
gotta
there's
stay
any
on.
other kind of recourse that we could have
Don't go away.
regarding Sunrun.
Sunrun, by the way, is a solar company, and in addition to what the Attorney General says, we had Jen McKim on a couple of weeks ago, did brilliant reporting here at GBH on the nightmare that is
Yes,
Sunrun
Sunrun.
for some. So Attorney General, go. Oh, and don't hang up, Susan. We're going to get your contact info.
So, yes, Susan, please stay on because yours is specific, and we have heard from many others.
Great.
And we have been successful in some instances in getting folks their money back, restitution, et cetera. So please stay on, and we're actively looking at Sunrun.
I believe.
Well, explain. So that's all you can say is that you're okay.
I believe
Based
we
on
have
the
someone.
complaints, we're reviewing those complaints, and the fact that it's from more than one person, obviously we have to really look at that.
Susan, we're going to get your contact info. A producer
Yeah.
will, and we'll give it to the AG. So please hang on. I'm sorry.
Thank
Cole,
you,
I think
Susan.
we have someone at the library wants to speak from the BPL microphone. Wants to ask a question. Oh, here he is. This is Sean. Hi, Sean.
Hi,
Hello,
Sean.
Sean.
Hi, Attorney General. Hi, Jim.
What's your last
Hi.
name, Sean?
Hood.
I know.
Oh, you know Sean?
I know his dad.
Okay. Hello, Sean Hood.
good to
Nice to
see
see
you.
you.
Is this a plant question here?
No, not at all.
Go
This
ahead,
is great
Sean.
he's here.
Okay.
He's his own person.
Exactly.
Okay.
My question is, are there any concerns in regard to in regard to book banning during the Trump administration?
Absolutely. And I actually appreciate you lifting it up because I was just at a conference in Falmouth yesterday with librarians. And it was packed. Hundreds of librarians from, I think, every municipality in the Commonwealth. And we have an active lawsuit that we have already won pushing back on the administration they tried to cut funding to libraries and other nonprofit institutions. I mean, think about it. Your local library, they're trying to defund. We won that case, and so it's still moving through the courts, but we won it where they had to turn that funding back onto libraries. But the question I got from the librarians is, why should people be so concerned? The value of these public institutions in giving us information freely, right? Not banning books, not censorship. Censorship should not show up in a democratic society. It shows up in other countries, right? And as soon as you have someone, or the history, Nazism, for example, they went after the press, the lawyers, they took away the books, et cetera. So when I say we're heading in a dangerous direction, this is one example of the conduct by this administration in looking to eliminate maybe libraries, ban books, censorship, even remove someone like a Maya Angelou from the Library of Congress or other places that everyone should be concerned about because you suddenly are moving away from a society that is based on democratic principles and one that's based on fascism or something else, which is scary.
Sean, good to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you.
Speaking of lawsuits, you were together with a bunch of other attorney generals at the IBEW local in Dorchester.
Local 103.
Yeah, you were talking about a lot of lawsuits there. What was the takeaway from that evening?
That it is the Democratic AGs that are literally on the front lines fighting back and looking to hold this administration accountable. It is not other elected officials. The most powerful role right now in holding this administration accountable to the rule of law, access to federal funding, access to jobs, protecting the Constitution, protecting our residents, holding them accountable for all types of aggression in various communities. It is the attorneys general from across the country. And it is only the Democratic AGs across this country.
Yeah.
And so I was proud to host our New England AGs, so AG Clark from Vermont, AG Nerona from Rhode Island, AG Tong from Connecticut, AG Fry from Maine, to talk about the collective work we're doing to hold this administration accountable. And I will add, it's not like we just wake up going to hold this person accountable. We would love to have worked with the federal administration, have partnership. We then are still continuing our work to fill the void. Our consumer protection cases have expanded. Elders are still being defrauded. Someone has to hold them accountable. The federal administration's not doing that. Environmental work that we're doing.
The
You talk
offshore
about
wind.
Offshore wind. You talk about Sunrun. Sunrun, the person who is harmed by Sunrun, the Consumer Protection Bureau that used to be at the federal level, you can't go there anymore. You have to come to your AG. So we're also filling the void on other issues, including housing. So we're doing both, and we just lifted up that work that it's multi-state. It's not just Massachusetts, but I've been stressing Massachusetts, we may be small, we're not New York or California, but we punch above our weight. And even at that town hall and everywhere I go, I feel like a Muhammad Ali because we're punching above our weight, leading the way and leading the charge in many ways to protect our people.
You know, one of the ways New England is not leading, and I just learned this a few weeks ago. I did a conference on this, actually with the head of your children's
I
justice.
thought we were having
Unit.
good news to the end of
This
this.
is fairly good, I think. Liza Hirsch, by the way, was fabulous. She
Thank you
know,
for
she was really
lifting
good.
her
It works
up.
for you. Yeah, she was. You know,
She
she was
runs our
great.
Children's Justice
And we were
Unit.
talking about the Study Act, which you filed. And the reason I brought it up in terms of the New England thing, I was stunned. There are 8 or 9 states that have some limitation on cell phone use in schools. And I know the Study Act goes
Yeah.
further. You will tell us this in a second. None of those states, much to my amazement, are in New England.
That's right.
New York is just in the process of maybe doing something. Explain to people, you know, in a compact fashion, what does the Study Act do, including this bell-to-bell cell phone prohibition?
It's designed to create the most positive, non-disrupted learning environments in our schools for our students, our teachers, and anyone in this realm, K through 12. And it says a few things. One is it complements our active litigation against Meta, Instagram, social media companies, and says we recognize litigation can take a long time. So we can still hold them accountable with a legislative fix. So, for example, you want to keep these platforms safe. Well, does your age verification work? We can hold them accountable. The consistent and infinite scrolling, we can hold them accountable to say you have to redesign the app. So redesign these apps to be safe for our children and not put that onus on parents. It also says bell-to-bell ban on cell phones so that you can't access these apps. Why? Because we're seeing an uptick. Bullying, harassment, often used by these apps in distracting our kids and expecting teachers to enforce it and be enforcement police. They cannot. This is why they're fully supportive of this bill. And then lastly, it also says we're also going to help provide you either with some resources. We want to be partners in this because we're asking the school districts to develop a curriculum on the positive and the cons of social media use.
That's great, actually.
And so it's a comprehensive bill, and I would encourage every parent, even young person, to pay attention to the Study Act, to connect with their local elected official on it. And this is actually something positive we can do while the federal government is not supporting us on taking on social media companies for the adverse effect they're having on the mental health of our kids.
And this is a bill that you and a couple of, a rep and a senator filed that's pending before the legislature.
That's
just
right.
So people know. The Study Act is the name.
That's right.
Roger from New Hampshire. Is it Stratham, New Hampshire?
Stratham?
Stratham?
Stratum. Yeah.
Hey,
Stratham,
Roger,
New
what's
Hampshire.
up?
Thank you for calling,
You know
Roger.
she's the Attorney General of Massachusetts, right?
I do know your AG.
Okay.
AG for
Even though he doesn't
Mela.
show up at
Well-
meetings. Go ahead, Roger.
And yeah, well, I'm Commonwealth curious as well. So,
I'm sorry, what?
my question, Commonwealth curious, and my daughter lives in Dorchester.
That's good enough.
okay,
man.
that's good
Okay.
enough.
So,
You can stay on
And
then.
what's her name, Roger?
Jackie
Tell her I
Jackie.
said hello.
Okay.
Hello, Jackie. Go ahead, Roger.
on Draper Street.
Good.
Oh, I know Draper
We'll
Street.
visit her after
That's
the
my
show.
former
Go ahead.
council district.
Okay.
Go ahead.
There you go. Well, I want to congratulate you for working to hold fossil fuel companies accountable for public deception and under the Consumer Protection Act.
Yep.
A story in the New York Times indicated that the Justice Department wants to throw sand in those gears. Are these state lawsuits, and there are 30 states and municipalities and counties holding, suing fossil fuel companies.
That's a great
Many of
question.
these are staying in the state courts, but are these lawsuits vulnerable now because of the Trump administration?
Well, you don't know. I will say we're going to do everything in our power to continue to fill the void where they're either walking away or absent, including on our environmental cases. So whether it's our case against Exxon or other work we've done even with other states, we will continue that work. And so we're reminding folks while we're holding them accountable, our cases in this lane, not just Exxon, even our work around PFAS and other areas where we're actually on PFAS, I was with your AG in New Hampshire talking about a collective effort. I think it's more difficult now for him given the position and posture of the federal administration, but we're going to continue that work. And our constituents need to know that we're going to fill those voids. That work doesn't go away. If anything, it's going to expand. And we also see this work as a consumer protection case. We mentioned Sunrun, which obviously is in the realm of our environmental portfolio when you have a constituent complaint come to us like that. So we're going to keep fighting the fight. We'll attach more resources if we need to, more human capital, and see if we can even get additional support from lawyers in Massachusetts to be a part of this work as they think about ways they can step up to support the AGO.
Roger, tell Jackie the
In
Attorney
Dorchester,
General will be
I
at
know.
her house this afternoon
On
by
Draper
3
Street. I
o'clock.
love that.
Roger, thanks for
Thank
the call.
you.
We
You
appreciate
know,
it.
we were talking at the beginning of the show about artificial intelligence and people's concerns about it, and I was mentioning that the so-called big beautiful bill that the president's trying to get through Congress talks about prohibiting states from regulating artificial intelligence. Where do you fit in on artificial intelligence?
It's a great question. So a couple of things. So it actually picks up on Roger's point, where the federal government is either stepping away or trying to undermine our environmental cases, which are on strong footing in state court. And we don't think there'll be federal interference, so we'll keep fighting. The same is true on artificial intelligence. They are nowhere to be found in supporting us in, one, lifting up, yes, there's benefits to AI. We all use it every day. But it also can lead to discrimination. It could lead to certain outcomes. Some people don't even know they're engaging with AI because there's no requirement that you be transparent. So we put out guidance, I want to say last year, some time ago, before this administration, making it crystal clear that our state data privacy laws, our consumer protection laws, our discrimination laws apply to AI just like they do a human being. And this advisory was welcomed by other AGs in other parts of the country as they were looking to make that clear. And we have very aggressive consumer protection laws here. So when we see this provision in the House bill, along with other provisions that are concerning, we immediately reach out to our federal delegation. We tell them to push back, of course, work with others. I think there may be some Republicans who are also not for this because it interferes with their state laws and holding AI technology and those vendors accountable. So we're going to keep pushing so that this doesn't make it forward or get passed so that our state laws are still applicable as defined by our office to AI and everything having to do with AI.
Attorney General, it's nice to see you.
It's great to
Thank
see
you
you
so
all.
much
Thank
for
you
being
for
here.
having me.
Thank you very much for
Attorney
being
General
here.
Campbell.
Thank you. I very appreciate it.